Hello dear viewer, the topic of this video is foreign and second language learning. In this video I will discuss the properties, theories and studies of it. The purpose of this video is to describe, discover and represent the significance and effects of language learning for our mind, body and life. Let's look at what language is. It is an organization of words or phrases applied in general conversations that are used by us as humans to be able to speak with one another. The commonly used name for the studies of language by psychologists is known as psycholinguistics. These studies identify language properties as they cooperate with the mind of an individual, as well as its creation and understanding of language. Psycholinguistics divide into four main areas of studying the language. Linguistics, the study of construction and transformation of language. Neurolinguistics, the study of the brain in relation to language and cognition. Sociolinguistics, the study of the behavior of an individual within the society concerning the use of language. Computational linguistics and psycholinguistics. This study, on the other hand, examines computer approaches that make use of language. Additionally, language is also an ability to reflect on, say out loud, and express emotions about objects we cannot understand with our five senses. Do you remember what they are? I will give you a second to remember. You may also click pause and say them out loud. Got it? Here we go. Our five senses are sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. Did you get that right? Good job! Pat yourself on the back. This phrase sounds familiar, right? You know the meaning of it, but do you know how to define it from a psychologist's point of view about language? Stay tuned for the meaning and definition of such phrases, metaphors, and analogies. We will look at these and more throughout this video. For now, all I can tell you is that these types of phrases are often used in communication with others. Now, communication or interaction with one another is the sharing and exchanging of ideas or feelings. Here are some of the types of communications there are. Verbal, as in talking with your mouth and producing speech. Non-verbal, which includes movements of hands or facial expressions to point out or indicate something. These are also used in sign language as a form of communication, but we will also discuss these later. Glances, which are used to attract the attention of the opponent or to look at an individual you like or dislike. These are often used in haka, which are known to scare the enemy in the rugby game. Also, these glances or looks have many meanings and purposes in haka, which may mean to greet, to say goodbye, or to congratulate, and so on. Touches, which may include handshakes, hugs, or any other tactile touch, are also a form of communication. For example, hugging your partner when you would like to say hello or to tell them you love them. Can you think of many more? Now I'd like to describe the properties of language. There are many. Language divides into 6 main properties. It doesn't matter what language you speak. Maori, English, Russian, or Portuguese. You get the point. All languages have these properties. For instance, communicative, arbitrary symbolic, regularly structured, structured at multiple levels, generative and productive, and dynamic. Now let's look at each of them individually. 1. Communicative, which we discussed in one of the previous slides. For example, I am telling you about the language learning right now, and you're understanding everything. However, my explanation may not make any sense to you, therefore is a form of disadvantage for this particular property and is often called miscommunication. 2. Arbitrary symbolic. In other words, descriptive and direct when connecting a symbol with its purpose. This is a form of a system. For example, we're talking about an object or a thing. Let's see examples of these in different languages. In English, kuko. In Russian, kukushka. In Brazilian Portuguese, kuko. And so on. As you just heard, different languages have different sounds that mean the same thing, but these may vary in other languages. In real world, when the word is identified with an object or an idea, this is called a referent and defined through icons or images. Did you know that these were often used in the Egyptian era to write messages on the caves, to represent a history or an event, like the one you may see on the right? 3. Regularly structured. Language has structure. Only specific designed combinations of symbols have meanings, and various patterns produce different meanings. In saying that, we come to the fourth language property, structured at multiple levels. As you can see from this diagram, these may be phonetics, for example, sounds, phonology, aka phonemes, morphology, which means words, syntax represents phrases and sentences, semantics, the meanings of those phrases and sentences, and lastly, the context of the conversation, aka tone of speech. For example, you are hearing my tone of voice right now, the words applied, and a certain body language of the speaker. However, last one you cannot see right now, but may see in real life. Therefore, you need to pay attention to the speaker. 5. Generative and productive. In other words, the ability to speak a language in a creative and unique way. Although this specific point of language includes some weaknesses, for example, when we think we use multiple words and phrases to create our sentence in our brain, which we then use in our speech, these vary in different forms and structures, so they might become complicated to shape in a correct way, which is why learning language when we are young becomes easier for us to speak it in the adulthood. And we come to the last property of language, dynamic, as in language constantly evolves in our world non-stop. For example, new generation says words like selfie, aka taking a picture of yourself. Remember when Kim Kardashian made a book of all of her selfies and called it unique? Or when someone calls you a goat, that is, man, you're a goat. Did you know that that means to say that the person is amazing? Can you think of many more words of the new generation people speak in English? Alright, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about some of the theories of language acquisition. Behaviorist theory. Skinner, as you may know, was a behaviorist who came up with the theory that children learn language because of the environment they grew up in. Have you heard a phrase, he absorbs everything like a sponge? This is relating to a child learning things that he or she hears from parents or any other adults. So, we are often careful at what we say around children. That is, if we say bad words. But according to Skinner's theory, children are able to learn new words and associate them with the things they see. Have you ever been in the position of a teacher for your little brother, sister, or child? This is exactly what Skinner has described as empiricism, which means that the sound is associated with a stimulus, resulting in the approval of an adult, for example, which then leads to this behavior to be repeated again. Does this remind you of anything? That's right, operant and classical conditioning that we learned in the Introduction to Psychology A class. This theory was criticized by a guy named Chomsky, which is where the next theory comes from, nativist theory. Chomsky, a linguist, has proposed that language is developed through birth, aka we are born with a language acquisition device, otherwise known as LAD, which is a mechanism that helps us understand language and speak it with all the correct grammar. Because this device is pre-built in our brain and does all the work for us. Sounds a little something out of the future, right? This theory has not been fully examined, therefore is not super reliable. However, maybe in the future we will have those built-in devices and we'll be able to speak many languages and communicate with people all over the world. In stating that, we come to the last theory of language acquisition, Interactionist Theory. This theory exists and functions to this day and has been reviewed by Vygotsky and Brunner in many ways, and proposes that it is a mix of behaviorist and nativist theories, which means language learning comes from interacting with the world and paying attention to the thoughts and processes of the brain to use these in everyday life. For example, image of a figure with a dress means woman and without means man. You might have seen this before on a bathroom door if you have been to a mall, a cafe, or the Bar 101 club in Auckland. This is your brain telling you which door to enter. Can you think of more situations like this, where you did not have to read a description of the label, but you understand what it means from the picture naturally? Alright, now that the more theoretical part of language is out of the way, let me reflect on the subject of language learning and give you some simple examples of it, as well as what is the significance of language for our mind, body, and in general for our everyday life. Have you thought about how people communicate if they cannot speak? Let me open up America for you. Sign language exists everywhere in the world, and it varies from country to country, just the same as any other language and accent. Also, did you know that in New Zealand, this language is called New Zealand Sign Language, aka NZSL, and has become a third official language in New Zealand in 2006. Well, now you have something to talk about at your next family gathering. Experiments conducted on language learning in older adults proved that human brain activities at mature age do help with language learning through the use of games playing and listening to music. Have you heard a song Despacito by Luis Fonsi featuring Daddy Yankee that was playing non-stop everywhere a couple of years back, and then you were singing that song imitating the language the best way you can? Well, this is exactly what this is, a foreign language learning. You then could translate those lyrics and use it to learn new words in Spanish. This is exactly how language learning is important for our society, because we can use these simple offerings of the internet to learn and apply the new language for communicating with others, as well as train our brain and challenge ourselves during the COVID-19 lockdown. Give it a shot. I will include some of my favorite songs to listen to in the reference list at the end of this video. Let's spread the language and not the virus. In conclusion, throughout this video, I discussed various theories, studies, and perspectives of language learning, which shows that it is something that people do not think about and rather comes naturally. Language is acquired through birth or adulthood to adapt to the society as well as make new friends. Our brain is a very interesting thing that includes learnings such as language and is capable of much more. Challenge yourself and don't give up on your brain. You're going to need it to study more psychology concepts. Thank you for watching and good luck with language learning.